Joe Biden is on his way to the Middle East on his first visit to the region as U.S. president. His first stop will be Israel, where security has been increased ahead of his arrival. The president will also meet with Palestinian leaders in the occupied West Bank. He'll then travel to Saudi Arabia, where he will join a summit of leaders of the Gulf, along with those of Jordan, Egypt, and Iraq. For more on Joe Biden's trip, you can cross live to Washington and join Arise U.S. correspondent Eric Ham. Eric, thank you so much for joining us on Newsday. The president is due to land in Israel. What can we expect when he arrives there?
The United States, Israel is actually the most stalwart ally of the United States in the entire region. The United States provides billions both in foreign aid and security assistance to Israel. And so for President Biden, this trip to Israel will be a doubling down of sorts. The president will continue to showcase not only to those in the region, but to the world that the United States remains a close ally of Israel and that the United States will continue to operate in tandem with Israel. And so that is one of the that is what we're going to see from the president on his visit to Israel. Now, we do know that in the last few years, the influence Israel has had, particularly on American politicians, has begun to wane somewhat. But nevertheless, what we're going to see from President Biden on this trip is, again, a continued effort to showcase the close relationship as well as the ties that continue to bind the two nations, both economically and security-wise.
And then he leaves for the Gulf, where he's going to be meeting with Saudi Arabia's de facto ruler, Mohammed bin Salman. How difficult a meeting is this going to be?
Well, of course, we know the president has certainly come under increasing fire for his result for this meeting. If you go back to the president's when the president was running for office, he spoke in very demeaning ways about MBS and also what his plans were for Saudi Arabia if he became president. Well, now there are many who believe that the president is going back on that platform, and so the president has come under increasing fire. Of course, many still have yet to get over, and rightfully so, the fact that Saudi Arabia was implicated in the killing of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi. And that continues to be a stain not only on Saudi Arabia, but also on the relationship between the United States and Saudi Arabia. And of course, this becomes increasingly complicated for the White House. As we know, rising oil prices have been a major reason why many believe the president is making this trip. In addition to that, of course, we see that the United States and Iran continue to remain at loggerheads over the ability to try to find a way to close the agreement on the JCPOA. And so right now what we're seeing is the administration is saying that they're going to redefine the relationship with Saudi Arabia. However, there's very little in terms of what the president or what the White House has said will make this relationship different going forward.
Well, Eric, do you think he will be able to convince Saudi Arabia to increase oil production?
Well, at this point, oil prices, and particularly gas prices in the United States, have continued to fall dramatically. In fact, gas prices have continued falling for several weeks now. And so the president does have a little bit of breathing room on this front. In fact, I would imagine if the president was able to make a decision on going to Saudi Arabia today, he probably would not make this trip, given where we are, where we're seeing gas prices continue to fall across the country. And so this was a move that was motivated certainly by domestic pressures. More importantly, the president looking at his poll numbers and, of course, recognizing that there's got to be a way not only to meet the needs of oil prices in the United States, but also in Europe, where we're seeing that the war between Russia and Ukraine continue to take a toll not only on Ukraine, but also on the rest of Europe. And so what we're seeing here is the president certainly has made clear that this is not going to be a one-on-one meeting. And the president has made clear that this is not a trip to discuss oil. Also, remember, the United States is an oil independent nation. But nevertheless, the fact that the president is meeting with MBS, it speaks to not only the president's level of desperation, but also it gives MBS, I think what he wants is, given that he has been seen as the de facto leader of Saudi Arabia, what we're seeing now is by having a meeting with the president of the United States, that solidifies his place as in terms of in terms of his actual standing, not only in Saudi Arabia, but also in the region.
Now, Eric, will Iran also be a topic of discussion when the president visits Israel and also meets with Palestinian leaders?
It most certainly will be. But look, because right now what we're seeing is the United States hasn't been able to actually get an agreement on the JCPOA. In fact, there are many sources who believe that the administration perhaps has let an opportunity get away from them. Now we see Iran continuing to agreeing to provide UAVs to Russia that will be weapons capable in this war against Ukraine. So that's becoming another issue for this administration. In addition to that, what we're seeing is the ongoing fights between the Israelis and Palestinians is also an area where the president has been criticized for not doing more to stand with and stand for Palestinians. If you look at what's taking place in the president's own party that controls Congress, particularly the House, what we're seeing is a number of Democrats have been more vocal in speaking out against Israel. And that's going to also make it difficult for the president as he tries to navigate that relationship with Israel. So what we're seeing here is a lot of landmines as President Biden begins this trip. And also the fact that the president's poll numbers back home are still sliding. In fact, an overwhelming majority of members of the president's own party do not want him as the party standard bearer in 2024. So that makes this trip particularly tricky as the president touches down in the region right now.
Well, thank you so much for your analysis and for being here with us today, Eric Ham.